Welcome to Esoteric Radio. We've been experiencing difficulties here in the studio with the switchboard. So we're either going to reschedule the show or we're going to continue from this moment and see just how much we can log in. But they did say they were going to be experiencing technical difficulties. The purpose of this show is to highlight some of the things that are in the esoteric world and have been going on. And since the masses have decided to get involved, since they're now seeing that the esoteric world is in fact affecting them, we wanted to bring forth information to allow things to be very smooth and very clear as the world gets ready to make its transition. So the first thing that was up for topic today, how we feel like we should begin this program, is first by talking about the relationship that has definitely developed between man, or the humanoid species, and the reptilian species, and how that whole interaction has brought us to where we are at this moment. Many have, of course, come forth with information. David Icke has come forth with his set of information, and a lot of individuals have already chimed in recently about this issue. Look into a lot of the older books of opalatria, which is the term used for serpent worship. You see that this has been going on all around the world. And what we reveal is within the language itself, the English language, there is actually a code that when you know what the English language actually means and the words that are a part of the English language, then you can actually read the story of our history. And this is revealed within the book, and it shows that there is an actual guideline that we can go by. And so now what we're going to do within a series of shows, and there's also our website, which is www.thewords, that's thewords.ning.com. What you will find available is you'll find a plethora of evidence and information about the topic of the extraterrestrial involvement here, but also information about the acceleration of the body, which we generally focus on. What we wanted to do to make our services a lot more different than what's presented on the market is we don't really just provide information about what people would deem as the situation or problem. We also provide solutions. And it is in that knowledge that we have found our place in the esoteric community and just revealing what's been going on with alchemy and what's been going on with the powers of the human body, or the terminology homo luminous, which is not to be confused with homo phantom. And so as we begin the show today, what we'll continue to go into is parts of that alchemy, the actual applications, because we have really no idea how long we're going to be able to broadcast, especially today that we're experiencing the difficulty. So what I would like to do first is highlight in the religions themselves, we can just begin to travel down the path, and we'll take the primary religions and show what their relations actually are. And the reason why we feel like this is important is to understand ultimately the phase that the human race is going to have to go into. It will be dependency, non-dependency. Right now we're in a phase of dependency, almost of a domestication. And this is why it's so difficult for individuals to accept new information, because of that domestication. It's the same thing as having a cat that comes in the house and eats, and then watching what happens when you don't provide that cat food versus a wild animal. And so what we're doing now is we're going to show that the domestication that's gone on with the species, the human race, has gotten to a level at this point where if we don't really wake up and grab the reins back on our lives, then we will find ourselves in a predetermined destination, meaning a destination that's already been determined. And that's why they call that destiny. And the difference between our belief is that we don't believe in destiny from the level of, we believe if you have a destiny, then you're actually moving backwards. Because if you're to do something new, then it has never been recorded before. And we found just within the language itself that the words were backwards, as the word indicates, backwards. And that has a lot to do with the direction that a person's mind actually goes in. And so getting deeper into this study and finding out that the main objective was to turn the human being off from the power so that it would have a dependency. Many individuals that have activated their light body or their light body vehicle have noted that there's really there's no need for food, there's no need for a lot of different things, especially in the abundance in which we consume now. And so that obviously means that a lot of our diets and a lot of our behavior is something that's being inbred within us, but not something that's necessarily natural. And this would, of course, cause the individual to have a level of dependency on society. And so there's really no guideline that we're actually going by today. The main objective here was to get the show officially recorded and these things set up, because we're going to be doing a lot more in the future with information. This is a portal where one can engage in and ask any question, and that question can be answered. But keeping that in mind, if our database is that extensive of answers, approximately 60 million years worth of information, it's very difficult for us to just speak about anything, because there will never be an end to that particular topic. So what's most important is for people to get the questions answered that they have that will make a difference for them. When I personally made my transformation, I kept 3 questions within my mind that I always wanted to know the answers to. And if I ever met someone that could answer any question, I would present them to that person. And once those questions were answered for me, it seemed to turn a complete wheel in my mind, the mind itself being something like a wheel. And when it begins to turn, it's cycling information. And if it has correct information, it continues to turn like a clock. And at this point, a lot of the information that has come forth, what allows us to authenticate this information is actually the language. It's for better lack of words, our cipher, and in terms of the information that we're bringing forth or taking in is actually correct. And when a person has this simple format of understanding what the words mean, then they're able to go throughout society without being deceived. So any type of decision that they make is actually on their own accord. And so that's what we're doing here. We're just putting the responsibility back into the hands of the individual by empowering them with what was known in the esoteric works as the great attainment. One should know that it is more closer to the omega cycle, as they call this cycle itself. As you see in the New Age circles, they're chanting Om, and Om is the vibration of the end. It's the sound when a world is on the way to implode. Why they would want to meditate and say those words is a different matter altogether. But just in understanding that this omega cycle, also called 10, or in Wizard of Oz lore, is the Tin Man, which is the being with no heart and using oil and metal in order to allow its life to take place. And this is the cycle that we're actually in. And all of these cycles can really be reversed. Human being is a total planetary complex, or a galactical complex, or a fractal of the galaxy. And in collectiveness, what one finds is that they can manipulate not only their environment, but also the environment of others. And so what's happened now is the human race is being used more like a SETI, or some type of processing unit for the manifestation of a small group of individuals' future. And that's what media is really about. Media is about taking an advanced learning technique like TV and radio, and these are definitely advanced learning techniques, flashing frames at 33 frames per second, which is what the move's at, and embedding the person with knowledge that either can be triggered or begins to affect their general outlook on life. And we can tell at this point, it's not so much as a judgment, but an observation, that the outlook on the human population itself has been decreased, meaning that from a galactical standpoint, how much the human beings are willing to stand up for not only themselves but also their kind has not to be that sufficient. And so the next project is, because this is all already expected outside of time, the next project is to insert individuals into the society that give the society, for better lack of words, a stimulus. What this stimulus begins to cause, or catalyst, is a massive awakening within the individual. And notice how it's worded. This massive awakening doesn't go in sheer numbers, meaning a mass of individuals will be awakened, but it actually goes within each individual's cellular structure receive a mass of awakening or energy. And we believe that once a few of those individuals begin to come forth as what's already happening now, then their message and their energy will begin to spread by auric contact. And this is what we've now isolated as being the main integer of changing society from where it is now, which is it's utterly powerless against the juggernaut that has already begun its planning, already began its military, already began its technology aeons ago. But there is what we just could call the wild card, which is the child that actually comes forth, or the children that actually come forth that are gifted with the ability to be able to analyze any strategy or any structure and to find the ways around it. And so what we'll discuss at this point is the questions that can't be answered by common society. And that main question is, what happens when you die? What happens when you die? When I was younger and first experienced death, which was about 4 to 6 years old, and something died, I asked, what happened? And they said, well, it's dead. And I said, okay, so what happens after that? And they said, well, no one really knows. And I said, so no one really knows what happens after you die? And they said, no. So around the time of, and that bothered me from there. It always was something that was in my mind that would disturb me, because I realized everyone had to die and no one knew what was going to happen after that. And so what I did was, by the time I was 12, I watched them put the stealth bomber in the air, and I watched how much was spent on that and how much time. And it made no sense to me that mankind couldn't spend the same amount of money that they used to put the stealth bomber in the sky to figure out what happens when we die. And of course, later on, when I had reached 25 and started getting involved in esoteric knowledge, I realized that they did in fact know what happens when you die, and it was only kept as a secret so that one would fear death. Because of course, fear of being a mind controller, if you don't know what happens when you die, and then there's no, you're not afraid to go into that, then one, you can really live because there's no inhibitions. And on top of that, you can actually get to a level where you become fearless, so there's no separation between you and pure energy. And so what I discovered is that when the soul comes out of the body, the whole meaning to life, now, two questions actually correspond with one another, and that's what happens when you die, and also, what is the meaning of life? Now, these two questions are so intertwined, because if you just take the first question, now, what happens when you die? When your spirit comes out of your body, now you're into an ethereal world, which is the real idea of Homo Luminous. It's very interesting that Homo Luminous actually wasn't the term given to this being that was like a light being and a powerful being. It was given to all of us, to what we were going to become. Because even if any person that passes from this earth goes into a phantom or light or energy world. And so Homo Luminous just meant the next stage that we would go into. And then the study on Homo Luminous was how to get prepared for that stage and to become a master at operating in that stage, and also even how to get to that stage while still in a physical body. So you're using two vehicles. And so what happened is that what was discovered is that when the soul is released from the body, it goes into this plane. And depending upon how that soul itself is vibrating and the strength level that it's on, at that point, it determines what that soul is going to be capable of doing, if it can withstand what's going on in that realm. Because it's just like you would see here. If a person is not strong to stand up for themselves, eventually they become part of a society. They have to the rules of that society. They have a set of choices, but not complete choice. And this is the same thing that takes place in other realms, because Earth is just a fractal. And when they try to say that Earth is in quarantine, that's what really contradicts a lot of the knowledge about as above, so below, because people think, okay, well, if Earth is in quarantine, then what's going on here is separate to what's going on in the galaxy. So that you can see how that's disinformation. So really what this was about is the Earth experience is about growing the spirit. And when you do that, that gets you prepared for making the crossover. In addition to the spirit being prepared, so the meaning of life in itself is to give the spirit nurturing. And this is what the Egyptians knew about. Now, when we say give the spirit more, to begin to nurture the spirit, the most interesting part is that the programming that's been embedded within everyone's mind immediately goes into a Christian concept of loving and caring. And it's no doubt that these things do have certain benefits to the spirit, but they don't do everything. And the real fact behind what's happening here is that one has to possess an array or an armor of ability to be able to fully be conscious. And so basically what ended up happening is that Egyptians were already ingesting, and this is, when we go into the Egyptian empires, we're really talking about the Atlantean and Lemurian Empire, and then off-world beings. But what they brought here as far as their knowledge and their investigation of the raw resources that were here on Earth is they brought the knowledge of how to take those elements and to feed the spirit body. And so that definitely means that the spirit body itself is something that runs across the dimensions, while the physical body is a product of the dimension, because these beings also obviously possess some type of spirit that's similar to ours as far as the makeup of the spirit. So what they were ingesting is supplements, mainly monatomic, and which is just called ormes, which is still different than white gold or powder gold, which many people are familiar with at this point. And what this allowed them to do is that even though they were already larger beings from a soul structure, is to make them larger and to make them stronger. And that's where domination continued. So now what we're doing here is we're getting at the point, because the fear that has always been within this being. Because what they said was, when the creation initially started with the physical body, not the spirit, because the spirit itself is immortal, and the creator of the spirit is, most have never even come in contact with this being. It's not male or female or anything. And this just comes from the esoteric knowledge. But the body itself, the actual make the matter, has been constructed by some beings that are actually trying to take credit for the whole creation, which is not true. But the physical body, they have had a lot to do with. And so when you look at the physical body as just as an organic structure, you see it as something that can be tuned. You see chakra centers as no different than what would be like the back of your computer, where there's different peripherals, different things can be plugged in. And this is also, again, stemming back to what Homo luminous meant to institutions like the Theosophical Society, what Homo luminous meant to the Babylonians, because each of these groups of individuals already knowing that the greatest attainment in life was a spiritual attainment of immortality, meaning you just were completely conscious, because we're all immortal, but you'd be conscious through all your lives. They pursued that from the moment that they got to the level of knowing, which was for them, because they brought their children into it, brought their bloodline into it, brought their lineage. It was at that moment. And so I always say that there's one set of the society that's invisible, and it's aware of us. And there's another set of society that is us, and we're not aware of them. And so you can imagine who is at the greatest advantage. And so what we also want to get into here is the solution, definitely, for all these situations, because many people are already familiar with a lot of the esoteric work and a lot of the 2012 and a lot of the different stories, but they're not familiar with the solution. And the first thing that it starts with is it starts off with the internal cleansing. And this cleansing takes place, as it says in some of the books, that man is the salt of the earth. It actually starts off with salt. There's certain salt compounds, one being C102, which is IBMS, that actually, when ingested by the body, oxygenate the body and kill all the pathogens. And this starts the procedure where the person actually deworms themselves. If one is familiar with the Matrix lore and the Stargate SG-1 lore, what they'll see is they have to they always remove a worm from them before they begin to enlighten them and explain to them about the red pill and blue pill, etc. And they always say the worm will actually somehow foil the person's enlightenment if it's not gotten rid of. And what this is about is, when we were younger, and I personally was breastfed, but a lot of the children were fed formula. And if you just look at the name formula, it's not a name that you would give to something that you want to feed someone with. This is your formula. So it's like a Frankenstein thing going on. And sure enough, when we examine all the chemicals and the elements within the formula of a baby, what it first does is it exhausts the baby's enzymes, which can't be built up again. The body never manufactures enzymes once they're completely depleted. So that's the first thing that happens, is the natural enzymes are completely depleted. Then from there, the metallic base within, because if you notice the formula is made up of mostly metals, immediately begins to go into the child's brain and into certain quadrants of the brain, because the body is set up in a way where when it ingests something, it knows exactly where to send it. And these alchemists, or dark alchemists, if you want to give them the terms, have used this knowledge and these abilities to basically begin a slow poisoning process that just keeps the child from going into a high vibration from the time that they come out of the mother's womb until the time that they're a dog. And most of the time that carries into the time that they've passed off this earth. And so this is the procedure that does take place with the children. And what I find is most important, like our work is steered around getting to the parents of the children to allow them to take their children just as you would take for better lack of words, something that's very valuable to you on a higher technological scale, and to use it as a port of pure energy, and to shape it and mold it in which way a creator, as we've become now, should actually do, rather than listening to someone else's advice. It's most interesting if you understand how contradictory the system is. They'll take the child away from the mother if the mother decides not to put the child in school. But it's okay to kill the child if the child is not, it's okay to abort the fetus. And so this is obviously another indicator, again, that society will always continue to be hypocritical and contradict itself, or with just what they call Harpocrates, or where the term hypocrite comes from. And this is an Egyptian deity going by this term, and that also plays the role as what many would know as their Messiah. And so this is the interweaving, and as you can see, there's a lot of data here and available for individuals to sharing. And if you have any questions, I only ask that you just type them into the chat box or something of that nature, because we just don't have enough to keep the call going at this point. And but what we're doing here is, there's no question, again, that we can't answer. But the most important thing is to get the answer to you that's going to be necessary for you to make the transformation. Now, why? We can start with this until someone asks them the question. Why make the transformation? Well, what happens is that there's already so much going on here on Earth that if the population is to double, which it is by 2012, just by how numbers work and also the census, that what that will produce is everyone could not live on this planet anyway. There's several reasons why. So that automatically means by at least 2012, but we give the date as 2010, one would need to be setting up another home. And that may seem a little abrupt to face, and that's a problem with domestication. It's the same thing as staying with mom or dad for so long, and then when they finally say, look, you got to go, you got to get out, then there's, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive? I can't see myself surviving out there. And that out there at this point is space. It's time for those who are raised on the Mother Earth that's playing a host, like I'm playing a host on the show today, but notice the word that's being used. A host is something that everyone is feeding off of. And it comes to a point where the host can no longer sustain what's feeding off of it. It must go into a dormant period in order to regenerate itself. So it must pluck off what it is that's actually feeding off of it. And so that's what the transition phase here is. This is the host age, as we call it also, or just hostage. And we've taken, multiple beings have taken the planet Tiamat, or Earth, and have used this planet as a way to allow its seeds to grow. And I can definitely say that we also see that we do this for other people and even other forms of life. When you look at the skin, there's at least 2,000 microorganisms within 1 centimeter of your skin. They're completely unaware of you as you are of them, but it doesn't mean that they're not there. And so because of that, we have to grow our concepts of where are we going to go. And because they already knew that this was going to come about where individuals were going to get totally maxed out, for better lack of words, on Earth, doing all sorts of things, and then they were going to want to leave. And so they created religion, because what religion actually does is religion gives a person a destination or a belief they can actually go after they leave, or after they leave the body. And so what this breeds is it breeds the person building a construct of another world in which they're supposed to stay in. But if they look very closely to the details of those worlds, they find they're no different than exaggerated Earth. Either rivers of nectar and gates of gold and pearls, and the Arab lure includes women, virgins for eyes, and each lure keeps adding to what appears to be a material world, because what's happened with religion is religion has attempted to explain the Creator through the eyes of man, first imagining that man is the Creator. And this is none other than something of an ego, again, where we assume that whatever created us, because we're the highest here, we're still playing that game, is just like us and made us in its image. When the actuality is that the spirit itself is the only thing in the image of the Creator, and the fleshly body is something altogether different, and it consists sometimes of at least 5 or 6 different parts. And so what happens is that in this world, when things were supposed to be simple, man offering information made things very complex. And that has arrived things to the point where now there are simple answers for the solution for the world's current phase. There's only answers for each unique individual and what they're facing at this moment. And it's good that we have certain individuals on our staff that's capable, that they are capable of answering a person's question no matter what stage they're actually in now, and being able to allow them to make quantum leaps in their transformation, just as what was explained by the Maya, which was that towards the end, that the big cog would start spinning the small cog so fast, and that would be our transformation rate. And so what the world is actually seeing now is it's seeing a transformation rate, but is it getting involved in the transformation? And because you can watch anything, you can watch a very fast car go by, but you can't run that fast. You can either jump in or you can just watch it go by. And so that's really what everyone is being faced with now, is the activation itself is becoming active once again in steering the consciousness to a positive level as much as you can. And each person is now becoming a piece of something that appears like, for better like words of Voltron. You got an arm, you got a leg, 2 legs, and a head. And each person is figuring out that the head cannot move around without the foot. and then the foot can't see without the head. And this is the symbiotic relationship, if any, that is going on within our galaxy. Is we all now have to come together if we expect to see higher with Earth. But if we expect to see higher things with ourselves, all we have to do is go inward. And that was the options that make Earth so beautiful, is because you have two choices here, not just one, or you can even do both. And so this is what society has now been able to present us with in this particular go-round. And we have to be aware of not taking what's been given to us exactly and treating it like we need more. We can more than take what we have at this point as far as what we've been brought from knowledge and from, again, the levels of chemistry and the levels of science, and take that and activate our body and see what's next. And what's next for the data, many people ask, well, what happens when we make the transfer? First of all, for each individual, the transfer will be different. Only those vibrating on the exact same frequency, the exact same transfer. So our own objective here is just to get people to be able to make the transfer. Then from there, they will begin to realize where their actual descendancy really is, what planet they're really from, and they will be able to go into their own story rather than a story that's been already pre-made for them. And so this is the science that's available on the site. Again, the site is The Words, that's THEWORDS, thewords.ning. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a little bit deeper into this, well, actually a lot more deeper. We're just going to take a brief break. And if anyone wants to call in, you can call in at the number that's provided on the panel, which is area code 347-996-5688. Keeping in mind that any question can be answered, and today is your day to get the information that you need. Okay, we're back again. We ask you to forgive us. We have no on-hold music. And I just want everyone to keep in mind that this is really our first show. What we plan on doing is we want to take this to a level of syndication and have it so it can reach people. My reason for giving these recordings now is it's the first information that is always come back on and valued the most when something starts. And I believe that these are some of the most precious sessions, because these are the ones that began without the rehearsals and without the extra stuff with being prepared to put a show together. And that is really how I want to do and approach everything, from the level of I don't want any rehearsed speech, and I don't want information that's already been rehashed through circles. I want people to reach out to what they know is inside of them going on at this moment. Like yesterday, a lot of individuals, a very strange time, a lot of transformations being made, a lot of animals being killed. There was basically things going on in the world, and people have to learn to address those things directly and say, why is this happening? Why are they doing this? Because there's nothing that's idle. And what I learned in the long run was, in this world, whatever you do, just let it have purpose. That's the way to always make sure that you're abiding by the laws of the universe itself, is to make sure what you do has purpose. And this is why, because you're actually present at that point. And when you're present, this allows you to take control of your life. But when you're in the future or when you're in the past, something else is taking control of that point because you're not present. This is where a person leaves their body on idle. And then from that point, there's something else that comes into them and says, hey, I'm going to take over the body for now, since the mind is not working. And so this is the empowerment that comes back in. And how that works is with the primary reality. And the primary reality that one spends their time in could either be on the internet, it could be playing a game, it could be in meditation. And these realities control the way the structure of the brain is really going to operate, because it's going to spend most of its time in that, immersing itself into that. And so what we encourage one to do is we allow the esoteric lore to be available, especially from the site, because it is the embroidery, it is the rich substance of this world. It is what things were built on, what gave man and woman the idea of going higher, and when they were already higher, when they knew that they were in touch with something. And so to immerse oneself into that world does give them another playground beside what's going on here. And so what I really would like to do is I would like to every day have individuals correspond with the site and to ask their deepest questions and to provide the answers to them. And so we'll just go with a particular topic that's here, and we'll just, I guess, what's here on the paper is the Nephilim, the fallen ones, as they call themselves, these six-dimensional beings. What we have discovered here on the actual species that's here now is what are called sons of the sun. And what this means is that they're actually descendants of these beings that came to the earth and started the population on the evolutionary honor that it is on now, meaning that the interbreeding that's been going on, as you see on Earth, there's heavy colonization all the time, has not been with just man and from the humanoid faction, but with different beings, and now everyone is just in a humanoid body, but is consisting of something totally different within their spiritual nature. And that is kind of the optical illusion of this dimension. And I just want to we'll get to some of the questions here. There's a question here that said, should we be the hero? Should I try to be the hero, or should we move on and find ourselves, our true self, so we do not give energy away? To answer that question directly, first of all, you're already a hero. And we use these terms lightly because, again, these terms have, a whole different connotation, but we'll just use it in the text of a person that's coming to save the people. Now, the difference in the way you approach this type of activity is the first thing is when you go into a society, let's say, Tibet, and you say, well, I want to study to become a master, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to escort you out, because they're going to say, if you're not a master already, you could never be one. And so it's kind of a way that you can, for better lack of words, Jedi mind trick yourself. You're already what you're supposed to be. You're just realizing that. So the role that one plays for other individuals is first. There's no reason in attempting to save others from drowning if you're drowning yourself. So you have to go to the armory. You have to go and get trained. You have to, because you're going to meet all types of individuals from all walks of life, and they're going to ask you certain questions, and they're going to require certain things out of you. And if you're unable to provide that for them, you can see how that would be a waste of your time and theirs. So the first thing is to get well equipped with knowledge and information and spiritual essence. And if you look at the lore of a hero, you see there's a hero always contains something of a special power. That's what really separates them from every other individual. And the most interesting part is that all human beings have at least one special power, and that's what I was always amazed about, is when we were capable of turning on human beings' individual power, each one had a different power, and that's why we also knew that they were supposed to be like a team, because each one had a special, one may have the power of sight, and the other one had the power of touch, and it made them a lot more powerful together. So what a lot of people are facing now in society is that they're getting a lot of rich information, and they're attempting to go back to the others, and especially family members, and explain that information to them, and they're getting no reception. The individuals are even pushing them off as if they're crazy. But first to understand, man, this level of knowledge in itself is of the payment, meaning that this is really the cap of knowledge. So when you take someone from dealing with, who knows, Jerry Springer, and then you're attempting to explain to them the Arabot and the angels and the different dimensions and the religion, and that's really like taking an individual and shooting them to to the moon and expecting them not to be afraid. People don't want to let go of normality at first, so what you have to do is you have to challenge them in another way, and this is about the spy versus spy. Each time the society comes up with a way of allowing deception and allowing distraction to come forth into the people, there has to be another group of individuals that figure out how to channel all of what they're doing into the direction that we want. Like, for instance, if you look at the Internet is used as a very heavy distraction tool. Most of the people are on MySpace and Facebook and places like that right now, wasting their time. But you can take the same Internet and make it a portal for people to receive the higher knowledge. So although the Internet itself was created to do more distracting of time and to put man on the collective mind, it is, for some individuals, being used as a harness in a way to bring forth information that's going to enlighten our species. So this is how we must approach everything now. And there has to be a group of individuals that are capable of doing this. And as I say in one of my works, now the world is going to see that it's going to need nations of heroes. So if you feel like personally, to get to the bottom of the question, if you feel like personally that it is your path to bring enlightenment to other individuals, it's a great thing to do. And it has its lasting effects because what you're learning, you're investing back into yourself. And there is a training process that comes about, and it's not something that has to take a long time. It's just basic principles. With the Code to the Matrix, we were able to take, I guess, approximately 6,000 books and condense them into 231 pages. And this is what you really want to do for individuals now. You have to use the video and the audio to get to them. And you have to, for better lack of words, dance a little. And this is if your idea is to enlighten individuals, understanding that enlightening individuals is part of the path. It's not the whole path. It's just the part where you learn to give back what you were given, and to learn the principle, the more that you give, you'll receive exactly what you give back and more in a higher amount. And so this is for some people things that they already have inside of them. It's already bred within inside of them. While for others, it's something that they have to learn. As I say, we weren't equal. They love to tell us that, but we're not. Some individuals know how to dance when they're born, and then some individuals don't, but they can learn. And so that's what we're here doing. We know the human being itself and the spirit is now being taken to the level of a prototype, meaning that they're trying to assimilate the human being now and make them all the same. But what we're capable of doing when they do that is know what everyone is if they like certain things, then they're going to love this. And when the opportunity for enlightenment, when it really reaches the public and starts to catch more of a fire like it is doing already, people will soon see very fast that you would rather choose enlightenment than anything else. And that's what they've been afraid of. Because if you quit your job and say, I'm going into enlightenment because it's self-sustaining, I would never have to work again, I'll just be taken care of. I can do it with my own mind. And I'm not going to consume really anymore because I don't really need this stuff because I have the less places I can go because I can't carry it all with me. When the actual idea, the simplicity returns back to the mind, and sometimes it's so funny to watch how we react to certain things. And it's a picture, and it shows a child. The child is attempting to get out of the gate, and it's trying to reach for the latch for the lock, and it hasn't seen that the latch is actually open, meaning that to get out of the dimension is actually available now to the individual. 2012. Here's the thing: when they ever say there's time to do something, because you exist outside of time, you know that what you can do could be right now. It just all depends on how determined you are at getting it. Everything definitely does boil back down to determination, and where you actually end up, no matter what you pursue, is going to be within your intent. So these are some of the basic principles that one can apply in everyday life, and it has solutions for every part of life. And it's necessary, especially for us now, to grasp a hold of these concepts to grab a hold of our seats and to get ready to make this journey, because we're already on the other side of the Milky Way. And you can give yourself any type of reason for why you're here. Some people say that, oh, well, you know, I'm here because I keep going through lives and I'm doing something wrong. Some people say I chose to have this experience, I just made myself forget. Some people say I flew by the planet and the gravitational pull pulled me in. And some people say that Anunnaki took me on one of their ships and seeded me here. And so there's all these different stories, and you can take either one. And some people say they got on the other side of the galaxy, and it takes 3,600 years to make it across the Milky Way, and so Earth is like a ship for them, and, you know, a very cheap ship for how you're living. But it's time to evolve. Now we get a chance to step off into a world that really appears like our dream. Our dream is actually a construct that we control completely. Well, I would say completely if the chemicals and things that are put into the food and stuff don't alter that. But it is a world that shows us that we have the ability to create things as we go. Because when you're in your sleep, as you just continue to go on, you're beginning to create what you're seeing in that reality, and you're pulling those individuals in that you see. And so this is like basically a person walking, and then the path appears every time they take a step. And that's how we have to learn to act. We're afraid to take the first step. It's like there's a movie that I've seen a long time ago, and they were trying to get to some treasure. And they're on the map, it said the treasure, there was a bridge there, and they looked and there was no bridge. And so they looked for a while, and then the one guy wanting the treasure so bad just stepped out there. And then he discovered that there was actually a ledge there. And that is sometimes the approach that we have to take in life, especially when it comes to the religions. You have to venture out away from the flock and from the comfortability of being around other individuals and into the unknown of discovering yourself and who you really are. And it is there that you'll find actual happiness, because we know for sure now that no matter what a person has here on earth, how happy they think they've simulated for themselves. In all actuality, they haven't even began life. And it's just like something we say also, which is the world itself operates something like a chessboard for the individuals who put themselves in control of it. And when a person doesn't understand the position they're at first, imagining that you're a ruler and a creator and all these things, but you haven't proven yourself to be one, this means you try to start off as a knight or a bishop. We start off as pawns, and every pawn has an opportunity to make it to the other side of the board and to become any piece that it wants. And from that point, then you can make the proper moves. But if you move in life like you're a knight, and you're really not, then the game hasn't even begun, because that's an illegal move. So what we have to do now is we have to go direct at the issue and deal with it as it is, not what we want to make it. Not what we want to make ourselves believe, like in the end of the movie The Matrix, when the architect finally tells Neo that they've created the design or the Matrix 6 times and they've destroyed it. The first thing he did was deny it, and he said that's a typical human trait. Is the moment that they hear something that they don't want to accept, they deny it instead of trying to figure out how to avoid it. Now what we're doing is we're getting to the level of understanding how to avoid what the predetermined future is with these predators or predators, as we call them. As society continues to go on, as the wobble continues to get more and more to its right-hand pole, you see now man beginning to manifest his worst nightmare. His world is like a movie. And as this continues, because we're creating what we actually we're creating our manifestation, you see now that the human being is being used more of a tool. But I will tell everyone this, before they perfected a lot of the mind control techniques and things, 10 years ago, let's take it, the level of a person's manifestation and do things like they discussed in The Secret was very low. They weren't capable of doing those things. It's only until within the last 4 years, because of what they would just say is the photon belt, they have so many different reasons for why human beings can do now more manifesting than they were able to do before. And there's a lot of truth to this. It's because of the level or the lineup that we're at in the galaxy, it's allowing us to manifest whatever our thought is. So the trick to 2012 which is actually 2010, the trick to this day is to be able to control consciousness so much by that point that they would be able to dictate by media, film, and things like that what was going to happen. And then the people were going to be so calibrated for manifestation already because of something that happens in the cosmos. They were going to manifest another world that these beings could already make the transfer into, and they would start the matrix again. And this is happening over a succession of over and over again, that the civilization itself gets to the peak of the knowledge for the masses, not the small elite groups, but the masses begin to lock into the deep knowledge, then the dimension closes. And if you look at history, this has been a succession of them closing the dimension every time the masses get on a level of intelligence. And this is exactly the same phase that we're at now. And so we have a lot more knowledge about what happened before, so we don't want to let it happen again to us. And it will be each person's individual ability to determine, and their own determination to be able to move around what the future has predicted for its masses by just moving oneself out of the ideas of the masses. And that's why our work is stemmed around, again, putting the power back into the person's hands and not guessing and assuming that something is one way when there's a lot of evidence to show us that it isn't. And so what we're going to do, again, we're just going to take another break here. And when we return, we'll go into a little bit of the book and begin to answer some of the things that you can find there. We thank you again for tuning in to Esoteric Radio. This is our first show. Very raggedy, I must say. You know, we got off with the switchboard acting crazy on us, but we can definitely promise to have it better in the future. And we just want to encourage everyone that's out there to delve into the information and to see what's here for them. And we'll talk to you in one moment. Many have, of course, come forth with information. David Icke has come forth with his set of information, and a lot of individuals have already chimed in recently about this issue. But look into a lot of the older books of opalatria, which is the term used for serpent worship. You see that this has been going on all around the world. And what we reveal is within the language itself, the English language, there is actually a code that when you know what the English language actually means and the words that are a part of the English language, then you can actually read the story of our history. And this is revealed within the book, and it shows that there is an actual guideline that we can go by. And so now what we're going to do within a series of shows, and there's also our website, which is www.thewords, that's THEWORDS.ning.com. What you will find available is you'll find a plethora of evidence and information about the topic of the extraterrestrial. And the reason why we feel like this is important is to understand ultimately the phase that the human race is going to have to go into. It will be dependency, non-dependency. Right now we're in a phase of dependency, almost of a domestication. And this is why it's so difficult for individuals to accept new information, because of that domestication. It's the same thing as having a cat that comes in the house and eats, and then watching what happens when you don't provide that cat food versus a wild animal. And so what we're doing now is we're going to show that the domestication that's gone on with the species, the human race, has gotten to a level at this point where if we don't really wake up and grab the reins back on our lives, then we will find ourselves in a predetermined destination, meaning a destination that's already been determined, and that's why they call that destiny. And the difference between our belief is that we don't believe in destiny from the level of we believe if you have a destiny, then you're actually moving backwards. Because if you're to do something new, then it has never been recorded before. And we found just within the language itself that the words were backwards, as the word indicates, backwards. And that has a lot to do with the direction that a person's mind actually goes in. And so getting deeper into this study and finding out that the main objective was to turn the human being off from the power so that it would have a dependency. Many individuals that have activated their light body or their light body vehicle have noted that there's really there's no need for food, there's no need for a lot of different things, especially in the abundance in which we consume now. And so that obviously means that a lot of our diets and a lot of our behavior is something that's being inbred within us, but not something that's necessarily natural. And this would, of course, cause the individual to have a level of dependency on society. And so there's really no guideline that we're actually going by today. The main objective here was to get the show officially recorded and these things set up, because we're going to be doing a lot more in the future with information. This is a portal where one can... welcome to Esoteric Radio. We've been experiencing difficulties here in the studio with the switchboard. So we're either going to reschedule the show, or we're going to continue from this moment and see just how much we can log in. But they did say they were going to be experiencing technical difficulties. The purpose of this show is to highlight some of the things that are in the esoteric world and have been going on. And since the masses have decided to get involved, since they're now seeing that the esoteric world is in fact affecting them, we wanted to bring forth information to allow things to be very smooth and very clear as the world gets ready to make its transition. So the first thing that was up for topic today, how we feel like we should begin this program, is first by talking about the relationship that has definitely developed between man, or the humanoid species, and the reptilian species, and how that whole interaction has brought us to where we are at this moment through our involvement here, but also information about the acceleration of the body, which we generally focus on. What we wanted to do to make our services a lot more different than what's presented on the market is we don't really just provide information about what people would deem as the situation or problem. We also provide solutions. And it is in that knowledge that we have found our place in the esoteric community, and just revealing what's been going on with alchemy and what's been going on with the powers of the human body, or the terminology Homo luminous, which is not to be confused with Homo phantom. And so as we begin the show today, what we'll continue to go into is parts of that alchemy, the actual applications, because we have really no idea how long we're going to be able to broadcast, especially today that we're experiencing the difficulty. So what I would like to do first is highlight in the religions themselves. We can just begin to travel down the path, and we'll take the primary religions and show what their relations actually are.